Many are calling this the summer of the flood. Those along the Gulf Coast and the Northeast certainly experienced that firsthand this week. But how do you know if you're at risk? Chief Meteorologist Ginger Zee has a special edition of It's Not Too Late.
Hi, I'm Ginger Zee, and it's not too late. For tonight, we are right in front of a gaping hole in the road, a bridge that collapsed in all the flooding here in Demarest, New Jersey. And from New Jersey and New York, Connecticut, back to Louisiana, I think millions of Americans learned with Ida, not only is flash flooding life-changing, but it happens in a flash and can happen to you. Also, climate change is amplifying these new extremes. With more humans and more humans building into nature, that fragile interface between weather extremes and the comfort of our own home is becoming a more frequent battlefield. In some parts of New York, the impact of Ida were as bad or worse than Superstorm Sandy. I recently went to a place that was devastated back in Sandy in 2012. So this is where your home stood.
Yes, exactly.
Joe Tyrone lived it during Superstorm Sandy.
But here you're seeing severe damage to the houses.
It is just a super powerhouse, and it has flooded almost the entire area. It is knocking out power via the wind and knocking down all the trees across the area. So it has really come in and been a catastrophic storm.
We're on your property, but there were homes lined up where this field is now.
Yes, all bungalows for the most part. When I first bought the house, I said, wow, this is like middle America, blue collar, what a great area. And my tenants always love to live here.
But it is middle America right next to a giant body of water.
Right,
I mean, granted, it's right there. He was one of hundreds in Staten Island that lost their home in Sandy.
This house, and this, again, this is from this.
I had no idea what I was looking for when, after the storm, what do? I don't want to fix it and re-rent it and put someone else at risk, and I didn't want to sell it and put someone else at risk. I learned everything after Sandy, so it wasn't like I knew this stuff and then I just went and applied it. I learned everything as I went. This is just stuck in there.
Yeah. Joe was part of one of the biggest post-storm buyouts in history. That means that he got reimbursed for the full value of his home.
And you're getting federal money, but it's run by the state. So that's how we got bought out. It's a little bit complicated, but a miracle, because no other place had done that.
Since then, he's led a push for more transparency, saying that people really need to know if a home that they're going to buy has a shot at flooding. When we go to buy a car, I think about the commercials.
Right.
Carfax. You get all the information. Homes don't have that history.
That's amazing, and I tell you that we said that at that time. Exactly. Why isn't there a Carfax for houses? As a realtor for over 20 years, I believe that we bring a lot of value to any transaction. So to me, it makes perfect sense for us to be the gatekeepers there as far as flood disclosure is concerned.
Come with me, because I think we need to understand this a bit more. You see the Phragmites and the marsh here, and it's hard to imagine that this street, the street next to it, and streets on over had several homes before Sandy. Now, First Street Foundation, a nonprofit organization, has found that 14.6 million American properties are at risk of flood, but 6 million of those don't make it on FEMA standards maps. You're saying that we're talking about inland, places that you wouldn't think about, and that's what your research found.
Yeah, and at very high elevations too, in mountain areas, places in the Pacific Northwest, places that people had never really thought of as being at significant flood risk. The flooding we saw in Tennessee and in Kentucky was shocking to people who had just never really experienced this kind of flooding before.
The First Street Foundation does something that FEMA doesn't when they assess whether or not a particular property is going to flood. They include climate change.
We're using the RCP 4.5 curve, kind of a middle-of-the-road curve, not the most dramatic, not the least, and trying to give a sense of how that risk is changing over time. Something like heavy rainstorms are just becoming more frequent. They're not becoming necessarily any more violent than they were, but they're happening more and more.
FEMA says you need flood insurance in a flood-prone area because most homeowners' policies don't cover it. There is a government-run flood insurance program, but it is far from perfect.
So you have middle and lower middle income people essentially subsidizing very, very, very wealthy people right now on the coast.
Good news, that's about to change with something called Risk Rating 2.0.
We're going to be doing a much better job of clearly identifying flood risk, and we're going to be able to price it fairly going forward. Currently, lower value homes are paying more than they should, and higher value homes are paying less than they should. And Risk Rating 2.0 Equity in Action changes that inequity.
We're about a block and a half or so from the water, so raising your home, I don't know, 12 feet or so, probably not a bad idea. FEMA says that even 1 inch of water can do $25,000 of damage. And just because you aren't in one of those high-risk areas doesn't mean you can't have a serious flood.
Hurricane Harvey, for example, where over 75% of the properties that were damaged were outside the high-risk area. Many of them did not have the flood insurance coverage that they need.
But many of you watching might be saying, I don't have enough money to buy a home. It is not in most Americans' plan to do that. So what about renters? Well, it turns out that lower income neighborhoods tend to have higher burdens when it comes to climate change. Redfin's own research has found that flooding is worse in neighborhoods that have been historically redlined. And when a black, brown, or poor white town is hit by a storm, they struggle to recover. Even if you think you're one of those places that just doesn't flood, think again.
Where it can rain, it can flood. 99% of the counties in the United States have experienced a flood loss. So folks across the nation underappreciate the flood risk that they face. They want to think it's not going to happen to them.
Here's the good news. Renter or buyer, if you want to find out your home's flood risk, First Street Foundation has a tool, floodfactor.com. So I am a 1 out of 10.
Which is great.
Minimal flood factor.
Minimal flood factor.
And so being at what level or what number do you start to go,
We defined a kind of a, you don't want to see anything much above a 3. Anything above that, you're starting to get into some pretty severe risk of experiencing that 1 in 100 event. Now, that doesn't mean your house is going to be leveled,
right,
but you're going to be experiencing some pretty heavy flooding over the next 15 or 30 years.
And for high-risk Oakwood Beach, they are at an 8. And when I get back from natural disasters, people always ask me, well, why do they stay? Why do they rebuild if they know that's possible there? Because it's home. So is there a way that we can use sustainable building, that we can use the information we have to stay safe, but also to be home? I think we can, and it's not too late.
Ginger, thank you.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.